Hello, everybody, and welcome to this session on financial planning for women. We are very happy to be joined by Rachel Evans, who is a financial planner from the Brooks Macdonald team. So, thank you so much to you, Rachel, for joining us. We are also joined by Paige from Gain. So, I know there is a lot of people, or there might be some people in here from the Gain program. So thank you so much to you guys for joining us. Just to let you guys know, this session will be recorded. So don't worry if you miss anything. I will be sending it to you after the session. But yeah, I mean, Paige, just quickly hand over to you if you have any announcements to make or you want to quickly introduce yourself.
Yeah, thank you, David. So I am the Universities and Career Pathways Manager at Gain. So I look after our internship program and everything else for university students. To my Gain alumni on the call, I'm so sorry if you're sick of my face. I am following you into your early careers, but it's just a pleasure to be able to support you now that you're looking for jobs or in your early years of a job. And it's really nice to meet all of the 10,000 interns on the call as well. A quick announcement for everyone, regardless of what charity you're related to. We are having an event at Mondrian Investment Partners on the 5th of March. This is going to be a great panel, AI and how it is influencing investors. I'll send on this link. So if anyone, Rachel, yourself, David, if you'd like to come, you're more than welcome to join for that event. But that's all from me. Thanks for having me here.
No, fantastic. Thank you so much for that page. And yeah, guys, I will share information about that via email as well. I guess, Paige, I'll follow up with you about that and I'll make sure that that gets out to the whole community. But to the main event, thank you so much, Rachel, for joining us. And yeah, I'm just going to hand over to you. As I said, I will be here in the background if you do need anything.
Yeah, amazing. Yes, thank you all so much for joining this webinar. I know it is 5:30, so late into your day, and I'm sure you're all very keen to carry on into your evenings. But thank you all very much for joining, and really hope that I'm able to give you some information that you can just take away and will be really useful to you. And if you have any questions at the end, very happy to answer. I've also put my email at the end of the presentation. So also very happy for anyone to email out if they have any questions that they think of after. So yeah, we'll get started. So yeah, the main sort of reason for the presentation today, it's financial planning for women. And I don't know if any of you joined my colleague's presentation, which he done a few weeks ago, Dan Barrett. He's very much like an excitable puppy. I'm sure you'll remember him. But he essentially went over the importance really of financial planning, especially starting from such a young age, because you know you're able to really compound your wealth. So very important. And I suppose where I come into this, where we fit in sort of on the women's side, is because how we think about our finances and our wealth is quite different to how men have to think of it sometimes. As women, we do face a lot more challenges, gaps in our careers, so different sort of thought processes. So yeah, I will just a little bit of an introduction on myself. So my name is Rachel. I'm part of Brooks Financial, which the wider company is Brooks Macdonald. And what we do is we very much provide investment services right across the business. So financial planning, investment management, mortgages, insurance. I'm in the financial planning department, and it's great that we have all these services to be able to lean on, because when I'm working with my clients, I'm really trying to understand, you know, what their aims are, what their goals are, what they want to achieve out of life, in terms of, you know, their finances. And then when we sit down, sort of go through everything, analyze everything, I'm able to use these different services, as well as my own, which is financial planning, you know, looking at tax efficient sort of savings and vehicles. to be able to meet those goals of our clients, essentially. So yeah, we have highly qualified financial planning and support teams within the business. And yes, so I am just going to now start the main presentation, which first of all, we'll start off just with some stats. And I think not to scare women, but unfortunately, there are quite a lot of stats out there, some that you might have already heard of, which just provide us some challenges really and gaps for females when we're thinking about how we're going to grow our wealth throughout our futures. So the first one is we live longer. So women on average live longer, so around 4 years longer than men, which is great. That's good news. However, as you can see just below it, unfortunately, we do actually earn less. So we live longer and we earn less money. So what that generally means, I think, for us, unfortunately, is sometimes we do just have to be a bit more careful and strategic and just have that extra bit of planning within our wider financial plans and sort of wealth building. So the next stat is the gender pay gap. So I don't know if anyone has come across this. You might have already come across this, but it's quite staggering where you look across all of the industry sectors and you can see, that gender pay gap is 14%. And that can have a profound effect on, how your savings in retirement or how your savings when you want to achieve purchase your first house and achieve a house deposit, that gap compounding every year can have a massively profound effect on your long-term savings. And I think what you can see with the blue bars specifically, it just pulls out the industries where you can see that the largest gaps are and then some of the smallest gaps. And what you will notice is that the largest one is actually in the financials and the insurance industry, which is actually where I am. And, that's almost 30% of a gap, which is huge. When you think of, a male sat next to you, and this is not to male bash whatsoever, I just think sometimes, the way that females ask for things, we're a bit more shy to that, whereas I think men are a lot more happy to ask outright and speak about their salaries. So it does really show the importance sometimes of challenging those salaries, because someone in the exact same role as you, performing just as good as you, can be on 30%, more than you in terms of your salary. And don't get me wrong, this gap is absolutely falling, which is great news. There's a lot of incentives, I think, by the government to try and push females and get females back into the workforce. But unfortunately, the gap still does exist. And with those industries, with your financials, your insurance, your technology industries, your IT industries, these are really high earning industries. So the highest earning industries have the largest gap. So, we really do sort of fall behind on that side of things. Whereas if you look towards the bottom where you can see administration and support services, that's a lot lower. The gap's a lot lower, but they likely pay, less than what you would in those high performing industries. So that leads me on to my next stat, which an even bigger gap you can see here is in fact the gender pension gap, which is quite staggering. I think, when you reach retirement, which state pension age is around 67, whereas generally to access your pensions, you can access them at the moment around 55, but that is only going to increase probably by the time that we all reach pension age. But you can definitely see here that this stat is huge. The fact that males generally have double the amount that females have in their pensions. And when you think of, how long you have in retirement and how long you need that pension to last you, if you're retiring at age 60 and we're living a lot longer, I know the general age was, what was it again, 80, around 80. But I have a lot of clients that are living well beyond that, and a lot of people are living well beyond those ages. So your pensions really do need to last you quite some time. So that is a large gap that I think for females, we really need to think carefully about how we can fill that gap. And I will go on to some more stats just to cover off, not to bash women even more and get us down anymore, but it is important to highlight them. But I am just going to sort of focus, and I threw this next slide in quite last minute, so it might look a bit not too tidy, but I thought it was really important just to provide some examples of, I think, as females, if that gap is existing for us, what small differences can we do, in particularly with our pension savings, just to be able to give us a bit of a benefit and to be able to grow our wealth without making too many changes. And I just had a little play around with the Hargreaves Lansdowne pension calculator. And if you all have time, definitely go and do it. It's quite interesting to see when you add different assumptions and you add different growth rates, the difference that can make over the long term on your pension. And this example specifically is, so it's a person earning £30,000 a year. They have no gaps in their career, even though, for females, again, that's really difficult, assuming we're usually the ones that go off on maternity leave. We're usually the caregivers if that becomes necessary in the future. So there does tend to be larger gaps for females, which is some more stats that I will go on to after this slide. But so no gaps in your career, so no gaps in your pension contributions. You're starting off with £1,000 in your pension. And generally the auto enrollment, so if you start a new job and you're earning over a certain threshold, it's around £20,000, then you will be auto-enrolled into the pension scheme, and that means you will pay 5% into your pension and the employer will pay 3%. So based on those figures, if you started saving at age 22 compared to 32, so I've put 32 because I feel quite young in my career. I feel fairly still early on. I've been in my role for around 4 years now. But that doesn't really feel like a long time. I think 10 years can pass you so quickly, which is why I really wanted to emphasize the importance of just sort of getting a handle on your finances and looking at the pensions and taking control of your pension early on, compared to just 10 years, which can actually go very quickly. So you can see here, look, just so from age 22, if you started saving just the standard amounts into your pension with this type of salary, by the time that you reach your pension age, your pot would be 188,000, which is great. And, that's a brilliant start. However, just by being able to call up your pension provider and have a conversation and saying, my fund that I'm invested in, or even if it's not your pension provider, you can speak to PensionWise, which is a free online pension service that gives pension guidance to anyone who calls up or who books an appointment. And of course, advisors, we're absolutely here to help and very happy to have conversations with anyone on the call today if this is really interested to you. But, just from having a fund which provides a 5% growth rate, which generally we would class as a balanced portfolio. So very much middle of the road in terms of risk. It's got around half growth equities and then also some in fixed income, which is generally classified as your safer assets. So a balanced portfolio with 5% growth is giving you 188,000. But if you were able to speak with your pension provider and say, look, I'm 22, I'm not able to access my pension until I'm 55, you have the time to be able to maybe take that bit of extra risk, maybe go into a growth fund, which is slightly higher. And there's many multi-assets funds. It's really important that within your pension it is highly diversified, but you will have funds which have that slightly more growth tilt and growth orientation, for you to be able to just leave it there in the long term. You can't touch it anyway, so that volatility isn't going to harm you until you get closer to your pension age, which of course is really important that you review it and probably start lowering the risk. But anyway, the difference here you can see is staggering. Just by increasing a risk profile, you will have 559,000 in your pension pot on the same contribution level, the same salary, no gaps, and then that £1,000 start, which is a huge difference, probably the biggest difference and the biggest jump. But then also, I think if you take a step further, and generally, when you speak to your employees, a lot of employers will have incentives to say, well, if you top up another 2%, then we will also top up another 2%, which when I worked that out today, £30,000, 2% of that is £60, but after tax, because you'll be paying tax for that to actually get into your pocket, that would be £40 in your pocket every month just for you to make that extra 2% contribution into your pension from a young age. And the difference can then be £835,000 at 68 years old. So just by even calling up your pension provider and making that 2% extra contribution with hope that your employer would then increase their contribution, very important, it's very different for all employers, but just honing in on it, understanding, what your current pension structure is and what offers the employers have to you is really, really important, because it really can make all the difference. And then, of course, at the bottom, again, you can see just by starting 10 years later, like I said, for me, this still feels really early on at 32, but you can really see that compounding effect that those extra 10 years make to your pension pot. So from, if you do, like I said, increase it to a more growth orientated fund, if you make additional contributions, just a small amount of additional contributions, and you start 10 years, if you started 10 years later, it would be worth 458,000. So, these figures are huge just by making those small incremental changes whilst you are young and you're able to, and you have the time. Just honed in a little bit there, more sort of on the pension side. But going back to the stats, why this 10-year gap is quite important is very much to do with this next stat. So you can see here that the caregiving, this slide is on caregiving, and women in the UK provide 26 hours of unpaid childcare per week versus 16 for men. Again, that's a huge difference. That's a huge amount of hours that we as women are out of the workforce compared to men. And when you think of when you get into your 30s or maybe earlier or a bit later, but you're thinking about growing a family and starting a family, and generally it is the female that goes off on maternity leave for 1 year. But even so, before that, you think, in your job, you're preparing for maternity leave. You're probably not looking to have promotions. You just want to slow down until you go on that maternity leave. You're then on maternity leave for around a year, which a lot of people do take these days. And then even when you come back, you're slowly getting back into way of work. So promotions are unlikely. And then if you have 2 children, that's almost 6 years of a slowed career break, essentially. Or it's a career break or a slowdown in your career. So these gaps very much do exist for females, and you can see why that pension gap is very much formed when you're looking at the gender pay gap, the amount of time that we have to take off care, and then of course later on in life as well, when if your family or parents need caring for, generally the role does sit a lot of the time on the female. And, this, I suppose this is a lot of generalizing. And that, of course, is not the case for everyone. But generally, this is what the stats kind of show. So, yeah, it is just really important, I think, for us females to think that there are going to be these gaps. So just taking control a bit more, maybe being a bit more cautious, and having a bit more planning behind how we're building our wealth, is really important. And of course, part-time work, a lot of the time we would, after you've been off on maternity leave, when you've got children, you do find that, well, yes, it says here 36% of employed women are in part-time roles compared to 14% of employed men. And so that will be your full-time salary reduced. And when I mentioned earlier on about the auto enrollment, you have to hit certain thresholds, which is around the 20,000 mark. It does keep changing, so would have to check exactly what that is, but you do have to hit that threshold to even start being auto enrolled into a pension. So if that isn't happening, then you're not paying into that pension for such a long time, and you might not at all. So you can really see where the gap starts to form, for females. So yeah, very much touched on the stats there. Not so fun, I suppose. Says how as females we are slightly disadvantaged. And although I gave some details about how some small details about how you can just pay attention and look at your pension and sort of take control of it, I just also wanted to provide some information on how I generally work with clients, and as a financial planner, what are the most important steps that you can take as a female to protect yourself and grow your wealth. And very much starting with the most important one is, of course, have an emergency fund. I think this is often overlooked, but so important. There will often become times in your life when something will go wrong, whether it's the boiler going or you just need a lump sum to draw upon. We always recommend, it's really important to have 3 to 6 months of accessible cash. Generally, we look at this differently for everyone, of course. If someone has a massive property portfolio, then they'll probably need a lot more just in case there's something going wrong with the houses. But generally, 3 to 6 months, we say, of expenditure to be able to be kept in an easy, accessible cash account. And cash ISAs are a great way to start that. By having that you're still earning interest, is tax-free, because ISAs can grow tax-free of income and capital gains. And then, by having that emergency fund, it just stops you from having to take out those credit cards, getting yourself into debt, because sometimes taking out credit cards and having debt can be quite tricky then to get yourself out of in the future and just cause more unnecessary stress. So first and foremost, absolutely have that emergency fund there. And here are just some websites at the bottom which just say for to have a look at the best interest rates. Your money saving expert is probably the best place to go. They're constantly updating the website with new cash interest rates and deals, and all the sort of new banks and maybe some unknown banks with better rates. So definitely do have a look at those. And second of all is protection, which I think this one probably goes a little bit under the radar with a lot of clients, but we do stress that this is likely the one of the most important bits of financial planning that you can do. Maybe not so much early on in your early 20s, but when you are going into late 20s, you're thinking of purchasing your property, having children, like we said, slowing down on your career, taking some time out, and having weddings. All of these goals are very expensive, and generally you have to be earning to be able to pay off things like mortgage, child fee costs, education, etc. So we say to clients, what would happen? I know it'd be brilliant if you've got two breadwinners in the family, or you've got one goes off work, but what happens if that one breadwinner in the family, something goes wrong? Whether they can't work for a period of time because they're ill and their employer cannot cover them, they have a critical illness where they just physically can't go back to work. How do you pay the mortgage? How do you pay for your food? How do you pay for your bills? It's really, really important that when you have any disposable income, that does actually go towards protecting yourself. And that is a really important consideration when you do have obligations such as children and houses. Whereas, yeah, and of course, no one ever likes to think about it. And it's quite a hard conversation to breach because no one ever likes to talk about dying. It's definitely not a fun conversation. But what if, the breadwinner of the family, something really awful happens to them? How do you keep the house going? How do you keep food on the table? How do you do that as a sole parent? So when you are looking at protection, it's really important that you sit down with someone and you really analyze at that point, what lump sum would you need, or what income would you need to be able to make you live a very comfortable lifestyle if the unimaginable did actually happen. And generally how we calculate that is on an age, health, and habits basis. And generally the critical illness comes as a lump sum, and income protection comes as an income if you're not able to work for a period of time. And then also it's great that some employers will have death in service. So something to absolutely look at with your employer, because if they do, that's a very valuable benefit. But also look at the details, because there will be limitations sometimes with employers. So just another focus and benefit to absolutely look at when you are looking to go into employment and you are considering your employment options. And yeah, there's at the bottom, we talk a little bit around how we use protection for inheritance tax purposes. But that's a very long time away. But there are tools that we can use with protection to be able to pay off inheritance tax liabilities, so the beneficiaries don't have to worry about that if something was to happen. Yeah, to I don't know, their parents, or yeah. So yeah, the next one then is the next important conversation that we'll be having is very much around savings, short and medium term. So when we were talking about the pensions, I think a lot of that you can't really do anything with anyway. So having more of a growth tilt is generally fine for that, because you can't access it for at least 30 years, or maybe even longer, depending on what the pension age will be by the time we get there. But for the short and medium term, it's really important that you do have flexible savings, and generally we would say to our clients, well, under 5 years, you should have your money in cash, good interest rates within cash ISAs. But anything above that, so if you're aiming for a property in, say, 8 to 10 years time, you again do have some ability there to maybe take a bit of risk, a bit of volatility risk, where you can put it into a stocks and shares ISA. You can use general investment accounts, and you are going to get a lot better in returns in terms of the growth over the long term, if you are using those vehicles. And again, very happy to have conversations with anyone who is looking to maybe start investing, or who is interested in looking at their first sort of stocks and shares portfolio, ISAs. Yeah, very happy to have those conversations with anyone. And generally, we would say, avoid using credit. Don't get me wrong, debt can be great. I think as long as it's managed effectively, it's brilliant to be able to take out a mortgage to be able to buy your first home. But I think it's really important that generally you don't overstretch yourself, and just make sure that you have that buffer of savings to just be able to cover any I suppose any gaps that you could have with paying off your mortgages, etc. And then finally, it's the savings for the longer term. So this is where we spoke earlier on just about that's retirement planning, really. And generally, because if it is longer term, you do have the ability to just take on that extra bit of risk, I suppose, and be able to go into a more sort of growth orientated fund. But before you do that, I think it is really important that you just speak with a financial advisor. But it just gives you the ability to really grow and compound your wealth over the longer term, to be able to achieve, the goals that you want to in retirement, and grow your wealth. And just going back to that, the slide where we spoke around the pension savings, by really planning from an earlier age, the difference and the compounding effect that can make over the longer term, is significant. So this is a positive slide. I feel like it's probably been a bit doom and gloom for women, which is quite sad, but it does actually go to show that, once this was a Barclays study to show that actually women have much better behavioral attitudes towards investing and saving. And generally you find that, I think, because men potentially, you saw from the slide that, generally men are within that industry of finance and tech, that they tend to trade a lot more. And on average, they tend to trade 13 times more, whereas women only trade around 9 times more. And I think they can maybe sometimes be a bit overconfident with some of the decisions they're making. Whereas I think as females, they're happy to just leave it there, leave it grow for the longer term. And they have the ability to be able to save and not touch their savings, which you can actually see over the longer term. Women average 1.94% above the FTSE return, compared to men, which was 0.14%. So the behavioral is there. I think it's just sometimes getting the strategy in place for females, just to be able to save that bit extra and plan that bit more for our futures. And that's pretty much everything. I feel like I've sort of spoke a lot there, and if anybody has any questions, I'm very happy to answer. And of course, my email is there, so very happy for anyone to send over an email as well if they think of anything later. And that's, oh, there we go. That's that. Ooh. Sorry, I think I've just come off the. Nope, no questions. Well, yeah, like I said, if you have any, I've just lost the last one. But yes, if you have any other questions, then just, email me.
Lovely, lovely, Rachel. We just had a question come through in the chat box just now. Somebody said, how do you have conversations with immediate family?
So
about financial planning.
So how do you have that's quite a tough one. I think I feel like generally we don't have conversations about our finances. And I think people are a lot more private around their finances, and they like to keep things private. But I don't think that we should be whatsoever. I think it's really important that you do just start having these conversations, even if it's an easy start to it. Just like, what type of investments have you done? What do you think about it? And it just opens up a new conversation, because a lot of clients might be very risk adverse and want to keep it all in cash. And you've just got to, sometimes it is just about asking those awkward questions of why don't you want to invest in the markets? Why don't you speak to someone about it? Because, the long-term effects of saving and the long-term gains of saving can be profound when you're using investment vehicles, but ensuring that they are absolutely in the correct investment vehicles. I think a lot of what we work with in terms of our clients is we have portfolios which are highly diversified between different asset classes. What we absolutely would not want anyone doing is saying, oh, great, I'm going to start investing and go and buy the odd stock or the odd one company or Bitcoin, because that absolutely is not the right way. It's about having a conversation and just encouraging and opening up about those first awkward questions, I think.
Absolutely. Shivali has also asked, at what point does it make sense to pay off our student loans?
Um, oh, that is a difficult that's a difficult one. And it's really hard to know what the government are going to do about student loans in the future. There's been so much speculation about, them wiping it completely or not, which I think when I was first thinking of paying off my student loan, I remember there was so much speculation to say, well, it will get wiped soon anyway. The government, will just end up paying it off, but it doesn't really look like that now. And the interest rates on them are really high. I think mine is something like 9%, which is crazy. So I personally just look at it as another tax. But I do think, when you are generally you have to earn above a certain threshold anyway to start paying it off. So I think it's more about sort of sitting down and asking yourselves, what are your priorities, whether that's paying a house, being completely debt free in terms of your student loan, and if you're able to achieve your other goals, if you can pay your student off as a lump sum. It's very much trying to look at the whole holistic picture of it, rather than it be just one answer of yes or no, whether you should pay it off straight away.
Absolutely. Yeah, this is a question that we get asked a lot. And
Yeah.
a few of the other sessions we've been asked that as well. So yeah, no, so super complicated one there.
Yeah, it's
With
quite a
all
difficult one. Yeah, it's so hard to know what to do about those. And my partner did actually pay his off because he had some savings there to be able to do so, which was amazing. Whereas for me, I thought, well, no, I want to actually save more money
right,
into my house and my property, which means a bit more to me at this stage and maybe later on down the line. So it's very much a preference, because and base it on your goals objectives, just because we do not know what will happen in terms of student loans down the line.
absolutely. This is, I guess, a question on my end.
Yeah.
Um, so with the student loans, I'm not sure if you know this, but like with the student loans, when they do come out with new policies, does that affect people who've already got existing loans? For example, I know that they did change the rules around when the debt gets wiped away. Does
Yeah.
that still count for people who have already got existing loans, or is it only after for people who have taken out loans after they pass this policy?
I'm pretty sure that the rules that are set when you take out your student finance, they will apply throughout. But
Okay.
sometimes, the government can just make changes which can affect it. Generally, you do find that a lot of students will have different setups in terms of their plans, their student finance plans. But uh, ultimately, if the government make a change with how they're going to approach student finance, then that could change for everyone. But generally, you are bound to those rules and those contracts that you signed when you started.
Mhm. Okay, thanks so much for that, Rachel. We've got I can't the questions are flying in now.
Oh, are they?
Yeah. Some Danielle has asked if you earn less than 50K, is it weird to get a financial planner?
No, it's not at all. I think with financial planning, there are generally fees that you would have to pay just to go through the whole process of us going through your whole situation, analysing it, etc. So generally, the fees do start typically around 1,000, and they can get higher depending on the complexity of it. But you know, I work with a lot of people that I'm very happy to just answer certain questions, maybe not officially give advice if you don't need it. But I'm very happy to answer questions to people if it's just generic. So yeah, I suppose it depends on your situation. There are, of course, fees involved, so it's just weighing up whether you think it might be worth it or not. But most financial planners are very happy to have an initial conversation with you, just to let you know whether they think it would be beneficial if you received financial advice, or you don't.
Absolutely. And there is also a lot of free resources that you can use, which we do surface as well. So
Yes,
yeah,
exactly.
there are organizations like Brooks out there, but there are also avenues that you can explore that you don't have to pay for.
Yes.
So yeah, do bear that in mind as well, guys.
Yeah,
Um,
absolutely.
and I'm not a financial expert though. Please do listen
No,
to
that's absolutely right. And
it.
pension wise is run by the government, and they do offer pensions guidance and advice, which is great. Pretty much generic advice, but they will be happy to take conversations with you. And yeah, most financial advisors are very happy to have initial conversations. And if they really feel like you would benefit from ongoing financial planning, then they will let you know.
Thank you so much, Rachel. Then we've had Dami who said, is it worth getting a credit card to build your credit score now? She is in her mid 20s, not looking to buy a house within the next few years, but what would your suggestions be?
Yes, no, absolutely. I think you know, there's a lot of credit cards which, as long as you're paying those off monthly, every month, to build up that credit rating is actually a really, really good way to manage your finances and to build that credit rating. It's just making sure that it's absolutely manageable, and you are paying that off, and you're not paying extortionate amounts of interest on those credit cards. So yes, absolutely, it is good to open up one to build that credit rating.
Perfect. And would you say that credit cards are the best way to build credit, or is there any other things that you would suggest?
Generally, I think sort of from being young, in your 20s, yeah, I'd say that is generally the best way to build up your credit rating.
All right, fantastic. Let me just quickly check the chat or the Q&A box. Are you able to talk about any services that Brooks Financial provide?
Yes. So yeah, provide. So yeah, we provide essentially the financial planning side. If you were to come to Brooks Macdonald, well, start a relationship with Brooks Macdonald, you would essentially speak with a financial planner, at first instance, and then we would decide from there whether we think it's best that you would receive financial planning or whether you could just have a direct solution. And we do provide you know, portfolios where you could just invest directly into yourself. We have managed solutions, which essentially you would just get a slice of a pie in terms of the investment portfolio. And we also have bespoke portfolios where you would work with a financial planner and an investment manager. And with the bespoke side, they very much tailor it. They take into consideration your current tax rate, and they structure it to really be as tax efficient as we can, holding certain assets within different accounts. Generally, that's, you know, for clients who have investable funds above 500,000 for the bespoke service, because how you structure them in different accounts, your assets in different accounts, are really important. But also, yeah, we do have those managed portfolios, which are a lot cheaper. They're easy accessible, and anyone can invest any amount into them. Well,
Wow.
I think the initial amounts for our managed portfolio service is around £1,000. I'll have to double check
Oh,
that. I think, yeah, so we can invest low amounts. It wouldn't be an advice led solution. But we could essentially just send you our portfolios and say, if you wanted to invest into one of our portfolios, this is the managed solution and this is how you do it. And we could give you application forms to do so. But generally, you would have a conversation with an advisor and they would decide whether you need an advice led solution, a bespoke model, or a execution only, which means you could just go ahead and do it yourself.
right, right. But that is quite nice that you do have those options available, and they
Yes.
are relatively low barrier to entry. So no, that's
Yeah,
amazing, guys. Definitely do check that out if you
absolutely.
are interested. um, do you have any advice for good credit card companies? Or
Generally, I would say it changes all the time. I think it
Mhm.
constantly changes who are the sort of best credit card companies, best banks, best interest rates. So using those sites such as what is it, moneysaver.com, Martin Lewis, looking at all those type of companies online for the best rates is generally the best place to go to
Absolutely,
because
absolutely.
they update them pretty much every week. There's always new sort of rates to go with.
Absolutely. Guys, we are building out a an asset pack for our alumni program members, which we are working with the Money Charity on to provide you with some resources regarding where you can find this kind of information. So have a look out for that in the next coming weeks. We have got you guys covered. Don't worry about that. So you are supported even when Rachel's not around.
Yeah.
All right. One last question. I
Yeah.
think, how do you think women should financially prepare for childcare responsibilities?
Yeah, that's a good question. Yeah, I think, childcare responsibilities, they are quite difficult. And a lot of my friends are going through it at the moment, especially because I think, when you do go into childcare, you're generally coming off the back of being on maternity leave. And when a lot of people are taking about a year off for maternity leave, most of that, well, some of it is paid. It depends on your employer and what maternity pay they provide to you. But I'm sure Brooks Macdonald won't mind me saying, but ours is 6 months full pay, and then 6 months you have to be unpaid essentially on statutory pay. So it's really, really difficult. But the government are incentivizing, they provide a lot of incentives for females to go back into the workforce. For couples earning under £100,000 each. So you've both got to be earning under 100,000. And we work with clients to say, right, if you are earning above that, let's contribute to your pension to get you under that threshold because the government offer 30 hours of free childcare, which is amazing. That's really good and really a good financial planning tool for us to use with a lot of our clients. So there are absolutely incentives to do so. But I worked out, I think, for one of my clients recently that even with the 30 hours of free childcare, they were still going to pay around £1,000 a month in the London area for childcare. So usually it can be around 2,000, but because of those beneficial hours, it's around 1,000. So, you are having to really think about where you're going to get that extra £1,000 a month from. So there's not really, specific vehicles to save for them. But it is something to absolutely consider when you think of, that emergency pot and when you're asking yourself, well, what are my next 5 years going to look like? What funds do I need? I think it is really important that that emergency pot is sort of built out bigger to cover those childcare costs and start saving. And like I mentioned, if you are thinking of that at quite a young age, then stocks and shares ISAs absolutely do give you the incentive to grow your funds, which by the time that you get to having a child, hopefully that will provide you a decent bit of growth.
Wow, wow, those are incredible insights. I did not know childcare was that expensive.
Yeah,
I would,
around London it is. A lot of my friends are looking into it, and honestly, it blew my mind that it was that expensive. It's yeah, crazy. But it is there are a lot of incentives now that are encouraging people because if it's £2,000 for one child and then you have two children, that's £4,000 a month. What's the point in females sometimes going back to work? So you
right,
understand where these gaps form because they think, well, there's not much point. So this is why the government are really trying to encourage females to go back to work by giving all these incentives for childcare. But still, you are right. We absolutely do have to save for these things, and yeah.
no, that's absolutely right. I mean, that's crazy, but yeah, I mean, look, guys, I hope all of the information that you received today will help you in that financial journey. Obviously, it's not gonna happen with one session, so utilize these resources that Rachel has mentioned today. Utilize the resources that we're going to be sending you over the next couple of weeks, and just continue to build on that confidence. Continue to build that financial journey. But no, Rachel, thank you so much for all of those insights. That was a really, really great session. I'm sure everybody will agree. And if you guys have any further questions, feel free to just message over to the alumni mailbox. Or Rachel, if it's okay with you, is it right if they connect with you on LinkedIn? I think that's
Yes,
all
of
right.
course, that's absolutely fine. You'll find me on LinkedIn, Rachel Evans under the books Macdonald. So yeah, thank you all so much for your time, and hope I didn't scare you too much with the stats. But it is good, I think, to just be aware of those statistics and just think about way small changes that you can make now from a young age to be able to really help yourselves and when you are thinking of your financial future and your wealth building. But yeah, like I said, very happy to answer any questions. There's my email.
All right. Thank you so much. Thank you so
No
much.
problem.
Take care,
Take
everybody. Have
care.
a
Have a
lovely
lovely
evening.
evening.
Bye, Rachel. Thank
Bye.
you. Bye.